Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call to order our Mount Shasta Planning Commission special meeting for Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. Are we good? Am I proper?
You're not being heard.
Do you want me to repeat it, or did you catch it?
You can hear you now.
I can repeat it. I'm calling to order our Mount Shasta Planning Commission special meeting for Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. And now I'll have the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item number 2, roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Pardee.
Here?
Commissioner McDowell.
Here.
Commissioner Boyinger.
Present.
Commissioner Higuera.
Here.
Commissioner Saran. Here. Commissioner Beck.
Here.
Chair Findley.
And I'm here also. Sarion.
It's Sarion.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, lovely. The gang's all here. This isn't on the agenda, but this is such a momentous evening. I just thought maybe, when would you like to introduce our new police?
I would. So, as you all know, it was a very long time finding a competent planner, and I don't know if you like being called out for this, but I will give Melanie Findling a lot of credit for actually bringing Jeff to my attention. And when we went through the interview process with Jeff, it was clear that any question that we asked him, which would normally stump anyone, he had an answer for it, and sometimes could provide citations from memory. So we were very lucky to have Jeff with us, Jeff Mitchum, and and I think he will know why he was hired after spending some time with him.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Pleasure
for
to be here.
joining us. Lovely. Okay, back in. Item number 3, public comment. This is a time set aside for people to address the Planning Commission on matters that are not on this evening's agenda, where we will have time for that later. You'll have 3 minutes if anybody is interested. We have a couple folks here and maybe online that would like to speak to us on an item that's not on the agenda this evening. And that would be a no here. Anybody queued up online? Oh, Jeff, are you? Who do I look to see if
Oh,
anybody?
it's me, yeah.
Okay.
I see no hands raised.
Okay, then we'll move on to our 4th item, which is the consent agenda, some housekeeping regarding approval of minutes. And if you want to have any discussion about any of them, we would have to take them off the consent agenda. Otherwise, it would be a motion for all of them. Did anybody have any comments or questions, or can we leave them on the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the consent agenda for the August 15th, May 17th, August 9th, and August 16th meetings.
Okay, we have a motion from Belinda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Vaughn seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll accept the May meeting because I don't think I was here, so I can't vote on it.
So I learned that actually it is okay to vote on something even if you're not there.
Okay, aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. And now we'll move on to item 5, which is a review of the 2023 to 2031 housing element update, with a recommendation for City Council to make findings of secret exemption and adoption, with findings that it substantially complies with the state housing element law, and that we would direct staff to submit it to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for certification. After a long process, here we are. Jeff, please.
Thank you. So that will be, I will give a brief introduction. I promise to get out of the way relatively quickly here. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through the agenda, and I'm fast forwarding to the staff report. I've got this new item here that is a cover sheet that's got the recommended action on it. Hopefully this provides some value to you, and I'm certainly open to revising this to suit your all needs. So I've just found this to be a useful tool moving forward when we seek to clarify the recommendation and suggested motion. So that's contained therein. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going over the staff report, some of the key components of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to the consultants who are lurking online. So Vanessa and Michelle are queued up and ready to go. I'll have to admit that I have done about as much as I can in the short month that I've been here to get up to speed on the housing element. I feel like I'm pretty darn close to understanding it, got my head around it. There are, however, a great deal of moving parts in these documents. I've certified 2 of them in my previous cities, so I understand that 90% of the change wants to take place in the last 10% of the process. I wanted to preface about what you're about to hear with the statement that we're trying to establish a threshold for substantive comments only on this document. There's a legal threshold for non-substantive documents or changes. Those are more clerical in nature. Lots of that stuff happens typically in the remaining steps of the process. So you'll see a lot of moving parts. Let's not get too stuck down in the weeds is my advice to you all. We can capture that stuff on its way to planning, or excuse me, on its way to council, certainly while it's parked at HCD for the next review. So we have lots of opportunity here to make changes of a clerical nature. With that said, there are substantive material in here. I feel like just for the sake of housekeeping, I need to make a couple of clarifications, and I'll clarify in the presentation. This document meets the bar for the legal standard for a housing element. That's what your resolution describes. The findings for compliance with the state housing law are clearly conveyed in the staff report and the resolution. This document further does not go above and beyond in any substantive way. I want to make it clear that the existing municipal code provisions for design review stay the same for market rate projects. So your big projects that are going to come through, that have come through typically for conditional use permits for market rate projects, so non-deed restricted capital A affordable housing projects that are deemed by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and I'm going to use this acronym a lot today, which is HCD. HCD defines what is a qualifying housing project for us. That definition in and of itself has changed in the 5 or 7 years or so since SB 35 came along back in 2017. It's very likely that that requirement, that mandate, or that standard for qualifying affordable housing projects in the next 8 years, so this 6th cycle housing element, will likely change again. So the important part that we're trying to establish here with the policy framework is we've got a bar for legal compliance. That's what we're trying to do. We're not going above state law with this document, and we're certainly not falling short, okay? What I'd like to do is walk through the staff report. I've highlighted just a few things for you on the screen so folks at home can see. It's mirroring the packet that's sent out, and I apologize, you don't have the highlights in the document in front of you, but they are on the screen. For clarification's sake, the housing element is outlined as described in the staff report by 3 primary chapters and the appendices. There's a whole bunch of material in there that's changed. We've got some track changes in red and green. And the red means that it's new. The green means we've moved it around a bit. Strike through obviously means it's gone. Underline means it's new. On the second page, or excuse me, page 11 of the staff report, of the packet, so that's the second page of the staff report itself, you'll notice underlined there and highlighted on the screen the key changes that were made in the document since the last review. And so HCD has seen this document. They're used to what has changed, and if they're silent on it, on any of the contents, it means that they're happy with it. So our focus, staff's focus and our focus tonight really ought to be on the changes that HCD is mandating, not the existing material that is in the document that they're not requesting we change. I won't go into the details there, but each of the nature of those changes is highlighted and in italicized and outlined. Very briefly, as you all know better than I, this document dates back to April 5th of 2023, when the public review draft of the housing element was published on the city's website. That then underwent a series of comment responses from April 6th to May 19th. Additionally, you all reviewed this document in 2 public hearings, and the first and second revised public review drafts were released in mid-May. After that, there were 2 hearings here and at City Council to authorize staff or direct staff to submit to HCD for the original initial 90-day review. So they've got 3 months to review the document, and on September 5th, we got their letter, and it's attached to the staff report along with city responses. Between roughly September 5th and November 15th, our esteemed consultants made a great number of changes. I entered the game right about then and started to do a little bit of tweaking myself, not overhauling certainly anything that you all did, just making suggestions and recommendations based on my experience about how we can thread the needle again between meeting HCD requirements, not going above and beyond, but getting into that certifiable threshold that's in the tweener there. If all goes well, as recommended in the staff report this evening and with council, we hope to submit this document to HCD for certification and then get into the heavy lifting of implementing the recommendations that are contained herein. And that's where the real, for us planner geeks, it's where the fun work really starts. We get to really craft some creative and progressive language to offer to you all for recommendations to City Council to change the municipal code to advance some of the initiatives that are contained in the policy statements herein. Without getting into too much detail, I will say that the exemption to CEQA is well tested. This is a common sense exemption. It just simply means that your action here tonight will not represent a physical change in the environment. It's simple. It's been well tested in case law. I've been a part of some of that testing and certainly am familiar with it through reviewing contemporary case law, and the exemption for common sense on program documents like housing elements is well tested. So the resolution does 2 things. It approves the exemption or supports the exemption findings, and it makes the findings that the element itself, as drafted here, substantially complies with the state housing element law. I want to draw your attention to the very last component of the resolution, which says, "Be it further resolved," and this is what I was talking about here at the outset, which is that minor changes that do not constitute substantial change to the goals, policies, and programs or objectives can be done at an administrative level or at a clerical level by staff. So for example, if we get another letter from HCD that says you've got more work to do, it's possible that that work could be clerical and you won't need to go back before you all or back to council. We'll make that call with city attorney, city manager involvement, and we may or may not see you again in 90 days. With that, I want to point to attachment 2, which is the letter itself to City Manager Todd as of September 5th. I want to be very clear and maybe even clear up just a little bit of some misunderstanding. This is a document that was produced by HCD, not by staff. So these statements that are summarized in A, B, and C of this document contain the explicit mandates that HCD is requiring we comply with to ensure that the document meets state housing law. So what staff have done is cross-reference that in attachment 3, and that's where we get into one of my favorite tools, the matrix of responses. And in the left column, we have the alphanumeric reference to each HCD comment. The next column refers to the topic or specific nature of that comment. The next column summarizes reference to the document itself in terms of the response at a staff level. And then we've gone so far as to make a finding statement that says that by this change, staff find that we meet state housing law. So with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you guys if you've got any questions of me about the process, about any of my housekeeping preemptive words of advice and wisdom, if you will. Before I turn it over to Vanessa and Michelle, who are going to dig down and go row by row for you, I think that we can accomplish this in 15 minutes. We practiced this, and I think we can steamroll through this pretty quickly. At that point, I'd kind of like to keep it Q&A. So maybe go row by row and pause to see if you guys have questions, and then you can engage with us on a row by row basis. So before I turn it over to those guys, do you have any questions of me?
Paul, you want to start? Do you have any
No,
questions?
I'm just going to listen.
Okay, Tucson?
Not at this point.
Linda? Vaughn?
No.
David?
No.
Al? Sounds like we're good.
Okay, good. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to, I think it's going to be Michelle.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's all yours, Michelle.
Thank you, and thank you for us being able to attend virtually. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully we have no technical issues, but I think we're good to go. So hopefully everybody is seeing that matrix, probably zoomed in a little bit from what Jeff was sharing earlier a moment ago. So just to, as Jeff indicated, we're going to go through these line by line, give a brief summary. The goal to get through this in 15 minutes, and we can pause if there's questions. So, and as this column, the second column is the comments from HCD, where items in the document were identified that needed to be addressed. And the first item relates to existing resources, housing resources for special populations. And so we did a revision to address that because that analysis was not contained in the document that is found in Appendix A. As indicated here, there was found to be a gap between the existing housing resources and special populations. However, there is an adequate supply of land that is available and appropriate to meet those needs. So there was not a need to change any zoning. So in terms of the programs that correspond with those, and noted in red, many of these are revised. 221 is the community awareness program that commits the city to improving awareness for property owners about programs and providing support and assistance to nonprofit housing developers and service providers and prioritizing funding. 241 is offering an expedited process for qualifying projects, as Jeff described in his presentation, for those projects that are required by state law. And 431 is a umbrella program related to supporting housing services for programs that target people experiencing homelessness. And finally, 514 is a new program to identify properties for purchase that are appropriate for construction and affordable, for affordable housing and special needs populations. And as I go through the document, these programs will come up again and again. So these are Swiss Army knife, if you will, multi-purpose programs that address a number of the HCD comments. So the second one here, 234 and 237 There was revisions made to that in response to the previous language of shall consider, which HCD found to be inadequate, and goes to, and this is what Jeff was speaking to, making amendments for qualifying housing projects as required by state law to allow them in zones as provided. And then those two programs were existing but were revised in response to HCD comments. 421 and through 425. These are mandatory programs that improve current allowances for group homes consistent with state law, and also amendments for supportive housing developments and low barrier navigation centers. Why these housing types? These are housing types that target the special needs populations, such as seniors, persons with disabilities, including developmental disabilities, farm workers, and extremely low-income households. That's what they're talking about when we're talking about special needs populations. So I'm going to move to the next row here. Scroll, scroll, scroll. So there's an extensive discussion of land use controls in the document. HCD commented that there needed to be some additional analysis, so that was added. As noted, this is Appendix A, and the sections that were amended are noted. As commented here, talking about cost, supply, just enhancing the existing discussion further is what HCD was looking for, and that's what these changes go to. So to the program, Program 132 is a program that was revised from the previous housing element for monitoring of the supply of lands suitable for residential development, including those lands that are identified in Appendix B as available and suitable for residential development. Also just monitoring residential impacts on cost, supply, housing choice, affordability, timing, through the housing element period is what those changes to Program 13.2 do, to address HCD's comments that they're, where there could be impediments to housing development. So program, I think we already kind of talked about this one. Yep, programs 421 through 425 are those same programs that are mandatory related to supportive housing developments, group homes, low barrier navigation centers. These programs were revised. These are types of housing that serve special populations that I mentioned a moment ago. So I'm going to go ahead and keep scrolling here. We have another program in red here. That's program 2381. This is a new program because to talk about, because HCD, parking requirements can be a constraint. So this just creates would be an amendment for a non-discretionary voluntary option for housing developments that are within a quarter mile of a bus stop to reduce the parking spaces for qualified housing developments. As Jeff mentioned, areas those qualified housing developments. And then 232, that's actually an existing program that was revised. And what that program does, would amend the, there would come before your city council, or planning commission, city council, as part of an ordinance change to change the existing requirement for multifamily development to have RV parking in addition to, traditional car parking. So that's what that program does. And that was an existing one in the previous one. All right, continuing on. So also they wanted more information on local processing, permit procedures, and we have a little funny icon placement there. We'll just skip by that one. So this is program 242. And one thing that was missing in the housing element that was submitted to HCD was there wasn't an analysis for the residential site plan process. That is a section in the city zoning regulations. So that it was there. What this program would be is to kind of fill the gap where the procedures for, how, one goes about doing a site plan review and the findings for that to make those more transparent for the public and easier for everybody to navigate, because currently how they're structured is a little confusing to walk through. So that was added, that program, and the analysis was added. So this program, 234, this was the one that relates to, for qualifying housing developments that are required by state law to allow them where they're code compliant and they meet the state requirements to allow them without a discretionary permit in the R3, C1, and C2 zones. That was specifically mentioned that the previous language of shall consider was not sufficient for HCD to ultimately make a finding that the housing element would meet state law. So there was a change made to that program, and similarly, there's a program for objective design standards for qualifying housing projects to make a change there to, because the previous program had the shall consider, and HCD said that wouldn't be sufficient to find the housing element compliant with state law, so we made changes there. 238, that is the parking programs that I mentioned earlier, the option for qualifying housing projects within a quarter mile of a bus stop to reduce their parking requirements, and then the one about RV parking requirements for all housing. So I'm going to keep moving forward. B1. So the site analysis, this really related to the need for if there was adequate sites for the special needs housing. That first finding we talked about, sometimes there's a lot of overlap between the comments, and so this is one of those. And as I mentioned earlier, the city does have adequate lands that are a supply that have the appropriate zoning for special needs housing. But then to make some improvements to the programs related to those housing types. I'll go over those. So first and foremost, these first 231, 232, 232, either there's no changes or there was revisions to these. And these programs relate to SB 35, which Jeff mentioned earlier, density bonus, and a review of new city fees for possible impacts on housing. And then 234, another part of that group is to allow an amendment to allow qualifying multifamily housing without a use permit as required by state law. So that one I mentioned already. 235, 236 are the allowances for accessory dwelling units and manufactured homes. These are mandates under state law, and there was no changes to those programs, but we wanted to show to HCD that the housing element has a lot of programs that address their comments already baked in. Continuing. Then 237 is the objective design standards, and then the parking is the 238. And 241 is the expedited process for qualifying projects that are affordable with a capital A or provide housing for special needs. This is a new program, and this is directly in response to HCD's comments. And then 431 is programs, it's this umbrella program that has some sub-activities related to supporting housing and services and programs for people experiencing homelessness, outreach and coordination with providers, review of NOFAs, that sort of thing. And then 221 is that community awareness program that I mentioned at the top, the expedited process for projects that have an affordable component. I think I already mentioned that, so I'm repeating myself, sorry about that. And then 514, this is a new revised program. It's identifying properties for purchase that are appropriate for construction of affordable housing and housing needs. So B3, their comment relates to just amending the analysis for potential governmental and non-governmental constraints. And the HCD specifically mentioned the design review process. So the program, as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 programs that are been revised in response to this constraint for qualifying housing projects to address those via where they're compliant with the code, they are qualifying, they would not be subject to a use permit and would be subject to objective design standards. This housing element does not actually change the regs as they're written now. So they're, as Jeff mentioned, they're down the road. In the future, there would be an ordinance prepared and presented to the Planning Commission, public hearing, all that for future consideration, and then ultimately would need to be adopted by the City Council. And so then finally, the AFFH action plan, this is the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Action Plan. It was revised because it did not include quantified metrics. This is stuff they're looking for, HCD, and is required. Quantified metrics, geographic targets for each of those programs. The edits that were made to the June version were specifically in response to HCD's comments under this B4. Because in action plans, they are to promote and affirmably further fair housing opportunities and promote housing throughout the community for all persons, regardless of race, religion, sex, status, ancestry, so on and so forth, familial status, disability, so protected characteristics. The earlier version, as I mentioned, lacked these quantified metrics and geographic targeting for each effort. The HCD also commented that additional actions to promote a variety of housing choices and affordability throughout the city were needed, and also identifying additional sites beyond those for RENA. Suggestions from HCD were to consider voluntary rezoning, identification of publicly owned lands, adaptive reuse, connecting lower income residents to services, and rent stabilization efforts. We did not, the AFFH action plan was revised, but it does not include adaptive reuse program or rent stabilization efforts. But that could certainly be revised if there was direction to do that. So that is a very high-level overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, clarify anything. Thank you.
Okay. Anything from you, Jeff, or I'll turn it over to the commissioners?
It's all yours.
Okay, how about we start on this end? Alan?
Wow. There's a lot there. Quantified metrics. That's one of them that caught me. Objective design standards, did you say they will be developed at some future date? And our existing design standards are a stumbling block to the type of development that's being proposed, or that might be proposed? Did I?
Yeah, I'll take a pass. I think I'll try to filter your comments and then refer
Thank you.
to Vanessa. So yeah, that was part of the initial confusion. The state law, that is SB 35, was very clear that qualifying housing projects only are subject to these objective standards, not non-qualifying or non-affordable projects. So all these market rate projects will continue to be reviewed by our existing guidelines, right? Same process, conditional use permit process and so on. What we need to do is create from these existing, this 2010 document,
Yeah.
which actually has some pretty good bones in it for
Thank you.
objective standards. I mean, I must say, it's, I went through it, and having done this again twice before, I can tell you that there's some really good basis in here for taking what is somewhat subjective language that's hard to quantify and translate that to objective metric-based standards. Pick 4 of the 5 or 3 of the 10 materials on this page. A roof pitch of 4 and 12, so on.
Okay.
So you can get to, I think, in a mass, form, scale, and even architectural character standpoint, you can get to that pretty easily with some objective measures. And so that's what
And we can develop objective standards that are that specific. There's the word.
that will be the challenge for you all. And
No, I'm not, I know the specificity, the specifics would be our requirement. I mean, it would be up to us, but we can be specific?
yes, you could go so far as to, for example, in Santa Barbara, they said white stucco and red tile roofs. You could try to quantify what a mountain theme is if you so chose, and you could season about your objective standards with said character defining features as long as they were very quantifiable.
No, we tried that once.
It's challenging.
It is.
It's hard to prescribe good design.
All right, that was my question.
All right, thanks. David?
No, I just want to keep listening.
Okay, Vaughn?
Alan covered it.
Yeah, Belinda? Same, yep. Tucson?
Yeah, that was my main
We're
question.
gonna get our mics.
Yes, that was my main question.
Okay. And Paul?
No.
Okay, well, that's not it for me, sorry. Because I also want to say that it sounds like that was a concern from the public also, was the design review. And so it's clear that the community also and the commissioners were concerned about that. So because it seems like, because here it says specifically we would change our 2010 architectural design guidelines, but what you've just said is that is not what we're going to do. So I would want to make sure that in here, we're just saying that we could develop new, specific criteria, objective standards for target multifamily.
I think that's a message sent and received. I think there's a better way to write it. And I think seeking clarity to that point will be something that I'm referring to as non-substantive, clerical level changes that we make before we go to City Council.
Okay.
So we will so clarify that existing guidelines stay the same. We use those to translate and to inform objective standards which apply to affordable housing projects only in the future.
And there would be a gap potentially between adopting our housing element and developing these guidelines. And do you have a sense of, like, if we were to hop to it, timing, do we need council approval to appoint a subcommittee? Like, where do you think we are in that process?
Procedurally, I would recommend a subcommittee of 3 of you to receive staff's recommendations, which I am prepared to offer. What I have done since my arrival is to, again, take our existing guidelines and quantify them and offer a hybrid of my previous experience with this document. I would present it in a iterative form so that you guys could push or pull on specificity or generality, to Commissioner Pardee's comment. I think that could be done in short order. I'm feeling like that's a 6 to 9 month process, not a 9 to 16 month process. I do realize and acknowledge the small risk that we're going to be absent some objective design standards to apply to a qualifying residential project in the interim. However, having been in this position before, I can tell you that there are plenty of safeguards in our municipal code and the general plan, and even our existing guidelines that are quantifiable enough to apply to a project. Recently, the Turner Center the Berkeley Turner Center put out a study of the efficacy of SB 35 that applies to these ministerial projects. A vast majority, I want to say in the 90th percentile of these projects, already incorporated objective measures as a friendly suggestion. So staff, if faced with a project that was qualifying in advance or prior to adoption by council of our objective design standards, there has been a history of affordable housing projects wanting to do everything they can, or developers wanting to do everything they can to work with local regulatory bodies, i.e. design review or staff or planning commission, to ensure that the project receives the greatest degree of support possible. They have everything to gain and nothing to lose by doing so.
Great. So would that be a housekeeping item that we would tackle this evening, or would we need to wait to?
That's your call as chair, Melanie. I think it'd be great to get to assemble, or at least start the conversation to assemble the subcommittee over the forthcoming days, not weeks. I think that would be staff's preference. And then we could engage at that level and begin to even potentially have a special meeting or two between now and the time this document is sent back to HCD.
Okay, well, commissioners, chew on that. And I'm not done, but I'm happy to chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Did I understand you correctly that if our current design guidelines, if there are aspects of them that are objective, we can apply them?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there is a caveat to that SB 35 is clear in its intent that it is to regulate affordable housing projects that are code compliant. And when it comes to design, the code needs to be a measurable requirement. So that's what we would do, is we would, in staff's estimation and experience, you can take an objective measure and apply it to a project. Okay. It doesn't have to be called an objective design standard pursuant to a document that is so titled, but as long as it's measurable, as long as it's quantifiable, and as long as it's in the existing code, in the municipal code, we can apply it. And that's what we'll attempt to do. Now, whether or not that stands legal muster in the absence of certified, adopted objective design standards is outstanding. But I'll tell you right now that the code is, or the statutory drivers on all this are very fluid. We are not targeted by HCD for challenge on that level. So I think we're in good stead.
Lovely. Okay, well then, where it says here that HO 2.3.7 directs the city to amend the 2010 architectural guidelines, that is not what we want to do. So we would need to change this because we're making separate.
Yes, we would do two things. I think we would keep it in place and then create new from the existing. So we can do some wordsmithing certainly to make sure that that's clear, but you've captured the intent.
Right, and I just want to make sure we're not putting in a program that's telling us to do something that we don't intend to do.
Right.
So it sounds like HO 2.3.7 needs to have a minor change.
Yes.
So if that's noted, who, if you want to note that.
Yeah, Michelle is taking good notes, and we expected this comment to come, and as long as you can convey your intent as a body to say, please clarify throughout the document wherever objective design standards are referred or referenced, that it's clear that those apply to new affordable housing projects only, and that the existing design guidelines remain in place for all market rate housing. And that's what we intend to do.
Our intent, though, would be to create a set of design guidelines that would apply to all, that are measurable.
Objective design standards for target projects.
Wouldn't we want one set of design guidelines that would be both for,
You've hit something that's likely the next domino to fall. So what will happen is the objective design standards get produced. They work very effectively for affordable housing projects, and the next question for you all will be, can we upscale that to all projects in the city?
Okay.
And the answer is very likely going to be yes.
So
Because
that's part of our
they work well.
process. So that's where we were headed, that's what I thought. It's been a conversation for as long as Vaughn's been here.
I think the
Certainly.
easy lift from a staff, given staff workload and resource, the easy lift is to tweak Title 18, Chapter 60, I believe, our architectural review chapter. And all that we add something that says, for affordable housing projects, you get a pass through to objective standards. And then we essentially test those with affordable projects, and it gives us a little time. Because from experience, I can tell you there will be some tweaks. Are we getting the intended end result from the application of this tool? And we may want to give it a year, and then we come back and we say this is working so darn well that we can apply it to all, and then we do a wholesale rewrite of Chapter 1860, which is.
Yeah, because I mean, I would think that consistency would be the main thing. Is if we're going to do something, we want to turn this town or mold it to more of an alpine look or something of that nature, that we do it in whole instead of just in part.
Right.
Well, now, would there be instances where, because it's affordable, where there are cost constraints that may be tied to some of our design guidelines that we have in our 2010, that would be a reason to have separate guidelines or separate objective guidelines as opposed to the 2010?
Yeah, if I may, I think you're trying to make the point that, if I'm hearing you right, is that it's possible to make an affordable project unaffordable by application of an unreasonable standard, correct?
Potentially.
Right.
Potentially.
So materiality, for example, instead of hardy panel, you're requiring natural wood or stone, which costs a great deal more, and it blows the pro forma, and you can't produce the project.
Right, so maybe there would be divergence between the objective standards for affordable housing and target housing as opposed to commercial and market rate. That's where I see there's a potential that we wouldn't always apply them. I don't know. We aren't there yet.
I'm going to allow hardy plank on a commercial building, too.
Yeah. No, you can see that once you start picking at this, it gets nuanced, and there's a lot more to it. So.
Well, so maybe for tonight, we don't want to, I just want to make sure that we change, that we aren't specifically amending the 2010 architectural guidelines. That would be my request. Also, regarding the RV parking spaces, I would say we would also want to which is HO 2.3.8, parent 2. This is something that is only for the target, not for market rate housing. The requirement for an RV space. You're nodding your head, I like that.
Yes.
Do you see my point? So that was on page 25. Like I say, HO 2.3.8.2 is something that we would only, we aren't going to redo the parking for all multifamily, just for Target multifamily.
I think you're right. Yes, I agree with you as far as a goal, but that's not how it.
Right, so I think HO 2.3.8 says we're completely eliminating it for all multifamily housing, and I just want to make sure it's only for the Target affordable housing.
I think it is. I think that's how it.
Oh, and then maybe if it's fine. Okay. Just a heads up on
Actually,
that.
can we ask Michelle real quickly?
Yeah, what? Michelle, yes?
Yes, the intent is that affordable units would, and moderate income, that would be your workforce housing, would not have this automatic requirement for RV parking spaces as part of the project. It does not extend to market rate. That was the intent. I apologize that it's not clear, so I appreciate the input.
Clarify that a bit.
Yeah, let's make sure that's clarified. And then I had a list of typos that I understand you got, Michelle, which is great. I think that, I guess I want to know that there were some sentences that needed to be rewritten. Maybe those were the last thing that somebody did in the day or whatever. Anyway, perhaps when you revise those, you do them in a different color so that whoever's reviewing them next can see that, so that there's not a substantive change. I'm assuming there won't be when you rewrite it, that this is still clerical, but I just ask that somebody can get their eyes on those, and that you'll see that it's, that the intent hasn't changed.
And those were conveyed in your previous comments that we have?
Yeah, I
Okay.
emailed these, so I'm just, but I didn't say that I was hoping that, because it's the potential for some of those sentences is, I couldn't really tell what the intent was, and so when they're rewritten, that it's highlighted in a different color so
Got
that
it.
whoever sees it, that somebody will put their eyes on it. I don't need to put my eyes on it, but I'm just hoping in the process it happens. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you all. So now I'd like to open this up to the public. We would love to we've gotten some letters today. Thank you for those. And I've got some folks here who might be interested in speaking to us, and then if anybody else. Oh, please.
I saw in farther, because I'm kind of lost now as what we're talking about, because when I get into the general body where the colors and everything are, there was one program, HO 241, the new program. It's all the special needs households, and it specified female-headed households, the single family type of thing. Why wouldn't you have men or women? Because there are single dads out there that need help too.
Touche.
Okay?
We could add that. We could say single-parent households, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah, that's great. We'll make that change.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to open it up. If anybody here in the audience would like to come speak to us, please come to the podium. Let us know who you are. And you've got 3 minutes, and somebody's managing the clock. There we go.
Hello, I'm Beverly Harlan. I live in Mount Shasta for the last 13 years. It's been a while since I've been to one of these meetings because it was before all of this audio-visual equipment appeared. I am extremely impressed. I see you got a TV screen even down here. I thought you were looking at me.
Both, there's 2 of you.
And you were looking at the screen. I was on the computer quite a few hours today, going back and forth with emails, trying to figure out what this meeting was about. I am not sure why I only found out today. That's probably my fault. I don't really know. I hope there was enough notice for people to come, but there's me and one other person here. So I'm very surprised to see that. I forwarded some emails to most of you. I hope all of you got the emails I sent. Did everybody get them? Okay, good. Well, all I have to say is that I ask you to read the emails that I sent, in particular the ones from Vicki Gold, Dale LaForest, and Johanna Windswept, and to take all their comments into consideration. I mean, I've been here 13 years, but I have not been doing what they do. They have been involved in these kinds of issues for decades, probably 4 decades at least, combined, those 3 people right there, and there's more people too that I don't know about. Then I just have a request that with all of this equipment, it shouldn't go to waste. People should be able to get online and see this meeting. Are they going to be able to do that?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful, because I have been at other city council meetings where they have really important meetings like this. And they're not city council, other types of meetings. And they don't record it. They don't let people see what happened. So I'm very happy to know about that. Thank you all.
Thank you. And if you want to be on the mailing list, you can get your name to City Hall, and they'll send you notifications.
I'm sure I'm on it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else in the audience like to come speak? Let us know who you are, please.
Hi,
You've got
my name
3
is Jerry Metz, and I live in Mount Shasta for the past 16 years, and have been coming here many more years before that because I love the place so much. I think there was 2 things. One is I think there's some serious lack of communication with the community about what's going on. I mean, we all heard about this about 11 o'clock this morning, out of the blue. And there must be a place, but we don't have a city newspaper anymore. So we used to go to the newspaper to see what was going on. That doesn't exist. We hear news from New York City and Timbuktu, but nothing from Mount Shasta. That is a worthless piece of, anyway. So there needs to be a way that the city members know about these things, because this affects all of us and our futures, and it's very important to us. And we're ignorant unless some civic-minded person manages to get an email out to us, which is what happened this morning. The other thing I would like to request, and that I don't know how that would be done, but I was very impressed with the document that Dale LaForest sent out. I'm sure you all got it. And I looked at it. It was extremely complete. And this is a man who has apparently dedicated enormous parts of his life to preserving Mount Shasta for all of us. And I would like at some point, and I don't know how that would be, to see all of his points explained, or either verified or denied or something. But I would like to see all of his points answered, because I thought they were extremely valid, and there just seemed to be some disagreement about, it's a little bit like the kind of like secret meetings going behind the public's back, and I think that's how the public feels, that we're not included, and that something is done, and we hear about it after it's finished. We didn't have any input, etc. So I think that would be very important, to have some better lines of communication between the city, the council, and you folks, and the community, so that we can know what's going on. Because it does feel a little fishy to the community when we see these things that are being done and say, oh, I didn't know that. So thank you for all your work and all that you do. But this is a very complicated document, and it's not something that the public could easily assimilate in a quick reading and understand what's going on for comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have folks online who'd like
We
to
do.
chat with us?
Betty Kay has her hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. First of all, thank you, commissioners, for asking some very salient questions and getting clarifications. I fully agree with what Jerry said. We do feel left out. It has been quite a long time since this subject has been put forth to the community, and it would have been really nice if it would have been put forth some time before, quite a long time, for more comments before this meeting took place. One of the feelings that I get is that the changes to this housing element that's been brought forth feels like that we're trying to, how do I word this? Trying to not only rush things through, but put things through that aren't necessarily really requirements. And as Dale has brought up to you, and I think another person did too, that these aren't really requirements. Some of them are suggestions. So we don't need to push forward in an effort to make sure that this gets approved by HCD. Instead, and just have clerical errors checked, but instead to take a precautionary principle and go down the road of let's do what's required, but nothing more, and be able to maintain our village atmosphere. I guess that's all I have to say. I thought I had more, but I guess that'll do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betty. Is anybody else interested?
Yes. Peggy Risch.
Risch. You there, Peggy?
Yes, I'm there. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for their presence today and to welcome Jeff into our community. I hope that you can hear me. Can you nod your heads? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So I sent you all an email this morning, and I'm sure you've had time to read it. What I'd like to be clear about in my comment is that I would request that tonight you make a motion to basically continue your planning commission meeting and to bring back these revisions that have been brought up, many of them having to do with the language around design review, architectural review, what it applies to, what the intent is, and listening to this conversation and actually having looked at the document, these changes are substantial. They aren't just minor clerical errors that are being corrected, and I think it behooves the Planning Commission to continue your meeting, get that clarified in writing before you make any recommendations to send this draft on to the City Council. I think the City Council relies on the Planning Commission for you doing the fine-tooth combing. And as this document exists right now, it isn't fine-tooth to that degree in these very important areas that will really have an effect on our community, on the beauty of how housing, whether it's affordable or whether it's market rate. And so that is my request of you for this meeting, to make that motion to continue your Planning Commission meeting, bring back these substantial revisions that are much more than just clerical errors. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Who's next?
Dale LaForest.
Okay, Dale?
No, it's Johanna.
Oh, no.
Oh, Johanna, sorry.
Johanna? Okay, go ahead. Johanna, we can't hear you.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, welcome to Jeff. And I would like to also second all the comments that came before. I really liked Jerry's idea of responding to some of the comments, you know, that Dale and others have sent in, because I think, you know, this is a complex document and it is going to impact our community for a long time to come. And what makes me concerned about is like lack of CEQA and lack of design review. And tonight's meeting went really fast. And I know you guys were trying to get through it in the 15 minutes or whatever, but it would be great if maybe we could just, you know, I don't know, take a breath and let people digest some of the feedback, because I'm not sure it's entirely addressed, because even if it's affordable housing, CEQA is still important, because once you, like with water that I wrote in my letter, once CEQA impacts, like, you know, if we don't manage our water quality, you know, Mount Shasta, we're in a very unique place in our state and in the, you know, even in the country. We have, Lake Shasta is the largest reservoir, and we need to be judicious and manage manage what goes into our water supply. And I don't think it should matter whether it's for an affordable housing or a regular project. It should just be in general, we should manage that. Same with like the views. I mean, why would we do something, why would we take a view away perhaps for an affordable project than we do for someone else, or lighting? I mean, some of these things go across the board for anybody. And I think some of the PC members did touch on all of that. So thank you. That's my concern. And also that, this also came out like just before Thanksgiving, and it's a really busy time for many people. So anyway, I would like to definitely ask you to consider Peggy's request of, do a motion to continue this to the next PC meeting, and perhaps address some of the points that people had, so that, break it down for us so that we can understand it better. That would be great. Appreciate it, and thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you, Johanna. Who do we have?
And Dale is next.
Okay. We can't hear you yet, Dale. Dale, you there? What's that? Oh, Dale, have you
Hello?
unmuted?
Hello?
There we go. Yep, we've got you now.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff said that he streamed rolling through this housing element update, and I would ask that more time be provided to the public. We didn't have much time to review the document, especially because of the holiday season. Also, the city is violating the law and not providing enough time. I didn't receive the minimum requirement of 10 days before this meeting. Jeff notified me on November 21st. That's only 7 days. So that's a violation of Government Code Section 65092A. You have to postpone today's meeting. You didn't provide the public enough time. Secondly, the city is violating Government Code Section 65094. That requires that the public notice that was put in the newspaper provide a general explanation of the matter to be considered. But if you look at the agenda, you'll see that the city is also asking the Planning Commission to approve, a categorical exemption from environmental law. Nowhere in the public notice that was in the newspaper is any mention of that categorical exemption. That's hiding that information from the public. It's a violation of law. Now, as far as environmental review, I contend that CEQA is definitely required because this housing update sets in motion an exemption for qualifying housing projects from the design review requirements, from the large-scale building ordinance, and that's a general plan change. When there's an inconsistency between the general plan and other local laws, the general plan prevails. So immediately, if an applicant comes in, they would be under the new general plan exemption. It doesn't take any period of time for them to wait, and effectively it nullifies our design guidelines. And in the meantime, Jeff, you sound real bright, but we don't know you yet. We don't have the ability to trust that you or our city manager behind closed doors are going to be applying some type of objective standards that are not even written for projects in the interim. Now, the question is, how soon will this set of objective standards be created? For example, the city general plan in 1996, 27 years ago, promised this public that it would adopt a noise ordinance. It never has. That's 27 years later. Now, hopefully it won't take that long to get these objective standards, but you can understand the public has a good hesitation to trust what isn't in writing. So immediately, by enacting this housing element update, you will cause the potential for environmental problems. My letter shows illustration.
Dale?
Thank you.
3 minutes. Thank you for your comments.
Vicki Gold.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd also welcome.
Oh, hang on. Vicki, you're not coming in very clear. Could you try again?
Yes. Can you hear me?
That's much better. Thank you.
Welcome to Jeff. And I also want to echo the comments of everybody who's spoken, including Jerry. I think it would be optimal if we can have some response to the specific points that Dale made, because he is the person who's got the most CEQA knowledge. Secondly, I am going to request that when we are making public comments, that instead of holding, the minutes in front of the screen, I would like to see your faces. I know this is a technicality, but we can't tell how you're responding to what we say if that's up there. I appreciate it being there, but it could be there for just at the very end, the last minute. Thank you so much. Thirdly, I also was notified only 7 days in advance of the meeting and appreciate that notice, but I think Dale is correct technically about the 10-day notice. So I hope you will postpone the decision and come back with a special meeting as soon as you find it possible, and then notify us in the community 10 days in advance. I think the other thing is just another technicality, but when people come in, they're emailing me and telling me that they are in the meeting, but they're on YouTube. If Kathy and Jeff and staff and IT could make it clear that it's when it says comment, you don't have to make a comment, so that it would be the preferred way. There have been some meetings where there have been 50 people who have been on YouTube, but you have no way of knowing that. We know you want to have transparency and you want public involvement. We've heard this many times over the years, and I believe that's true. And particularly when we have a new director of planning, I think it's really optimal to get as many people to attend as possible and for you to know that. So while we can share with the community afterwards or let them know that they can watch it on YouTube, there are many people who miss out because that's not exactly clear, and I'm sure it's an easy fix. I truly believe that this may be a good thing. I like the idea of revisiting the mountain village theme. I think we could come up with some things that are quite beautiful and can actually consult with some of the other mountain communities to see how they word their themes for architectural and design aspects. I'm hoping that you will see that not just that it's been tested, that we don't need to comply with CEQA, but the optimal thing, as many other cities have done, is they have complied and had a negative declaration. I do think we want to do the optimal thing. So I would suggest going for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicki. Do we have somebody else?
Looks like that is it.
Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing. And commissioners, some thoughts about what we've heard, about what we've discussed? Paul?
No, I have nothing to say.
Okay. Tucson?
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for your comments. It's always great to hear from the public. One of the questions that came up that I'd like a little clarification on is the CEQA requirement or not requirement in this case with a certain inconsistency with the general plan Is that an issue in your mind?
In my estimation, no. We're making no changes to the density standards, the land use designations themselves. There are no required amendments to the municipal code, so consistency with the general plan exists in a status quo fashion with this document.
I see. I'd like to also respond to some of the people's concern about this being so quick and coming up to our attention. We only got this document a week ago ourselves, and then there was the holiday, and so people had to do some very kind of quick thinking and quick work to get us these letters. I would definitely be in favor of a continuation of this meeting, just to give the public more clarification on what we're proposing here and with these edits, and a chance to respond to those comments. Another thing I'd like to kind of get clarification on is the difference between the suggestions and the requirements in this document. From what I see, HO 2.3.4 doesn't look like it's a stated specific state requirement, as well as 2.4.2. And I'm wondering if we really need to have it in there.
Say again what those are?
2, 3, 4.
And what was the other one?
And the other one was 242.
2, 3, 4, and 242. Wherever you see the state housing law icon, the state of California, that indicates that it's complying with a state mandate.
I was looking at this table in specific, the table 2-1, and those don't seem to be on it, on page 45.
Thanks. 45 of the packet.
Through the chair, I have...
Oh, yes. I was hoping you were there. We don't have your face anymore. We just have the Shasta. Yes, please.
Through the chair, yes. I can share my screen to, if that would maybe ease this conversation with the, I have 2, 3, 4 already queued up, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this was specifically brought up by the commissioner. I'm going to just go ahead and let, if Jeff wants to maybe jump in here ahead of me, I would be fine with that on this program regarding whether it's mandated, mandatory requirement, because I do see that it lacks the icon, but I'll go ahead and defer to Jeff unless he wants me to jump in here.
Well, and this is Vanessa, if I may. I just had some thoughts too, that even if, so the icon is designating a program that is meeting a specific state law, that HCD also looks at all of the programs as a whole and makes a determination if they are addressing all of the state laws, even if it's not meeting a specific state law, if it's meeting the intent of, the state law to further housing and affirmatively further fair housing and provide adequate sites. So it does take into account kind of all of the programs as a whole, in addition to looking for the individual programs that meet individual state requirements. It is also looking at like the whole program package, is my opinion.
So the fact that it's not listed in Table 2-4 does not mean that it's not responding to state law?
And there's also not an icon next to it on page 50 on HO 234.
Correct. So I can take a pass at this one. So the intent, there's sort of two levels of response. HCD in their response letter has made some demanding expectations with respect to changing provisions for all multifamily housing projects. What this particular one does is remove a layer of redundancy. So if you are familiar with Chapter 1870, it is particularly designed to add another layer of review for large projects. Large multifamily projects, in this case, particularly affordable large multifamily projects, if held to that standard, would be in violation of the statutory requirements for affordable housing projects, qualifying affordable housing projects. So this, in a sense, removes that layer of redundancy, thereby being consistent with the express law, not adding another layer of discretionary review on top of just going straight through to a building permit for affordable projects, or subject to objective design standards. In the case of multifamily projects that are market rate, removing this has effectively no result. There is no net impact to it. In other words, if it's a market rate project, it's over 4 units. Chapter 1816 of our base zone still requires a conditional use permit. The intent of this was to clean the code up, to both comply with state law for capital A affordable housing projects, but also eliminate redundancy, because if it isn't affordable and it's market rate, and it's a big project over 4 units to the tune of, I think it's 10,000 square feet is the requirement for 1870, it's somewhat moot. So when staff looks at this opportunity to be consistent with code or state law, we also look at an opportunity to clarify, for simplicity's sake, for not only affordable projects, but frankly, multifamily projects that are also part of HCD's intent. So they want to see more multifamily projects, and they want to see our code queued up to reinforce that mandate. So that's
yeah.
hopefully
Thank you for that explanation.
And maybe just to clarify why it doesn't have the icon and why it's not listed in that table early on in this chapter. So the original language is this shall consider amendments. So that language is not a commitment, that's a maybe. And so at the time this document was prepared, that language was not a mandate under state law, like whereas an easy one is density bonus. Everybody, all jurisdictions, big and small, have to update their regs to meet density bonus. But because this language of shall consider amendments, it didn't get the icon and it didn't get listed in the table. But the language now, which is in, this was a very, in my opinion, pretty expressed clear in HCD's letter, this language was not adequate. So even though there may be some interpretation that HCD's letter or suggestions, what they're trying to guide jurisdictions, the city, to how they can get to meet the requirements of state law. And so in response, this was reworded. And it could be appropriate to add an icon, but that's the origin of why there's no icon and why it's not listed, is that shall consider. That's not a specific commitment. Hopefully that clarifies. If the pleasure of the commission, we could go to, I think there's a mention of program 242 as well, or I could stop sharing.
Was 242 your other one?
Yes, yes, it was.
So is that the same circumstances apply to 242?
So 242, it is a new program because what was missing in the previous housing element, the previous version of the housing element, was there wasn't an analysis of the residential site plan review process. That was missing. And HED said, you need to include that if you want to, go down the pathway for a certified housing element. So we added that, and as part of that process, we review what the existing regulations say. Are the parts there? Is it transparent for the public, for the developers, for the city? And what we found was that there are, the site plan procedures speak to, what needs to be submitted, but it doesn't lay out the procedures, like how you go about doing that site plan review for everybody to know. And then there's findings, but there's not in the municipal code, but they're not made, there's not a good intersection that those are the findings that, that are to be applied to site plan review. The findings are like, needs to be consistent with the project, needs to be consistent with the general plan, needs to be consistent with the zoning. So what this program does is to, capture those and fill those gaps so that, in the future, assuming these changes would be adopted as part of the ordinance process, the public, a developer, and, city, they all know what needs to be submitted. That's already there. What are the procedures for a site plan review? And then what are the findings? So that's what that does. So hopefully that helps.
Does that help?
Yeah, it definitely helps to just clarify what that means.
It's just simply saying that whatever the state law is, please communicate it on your website and do so with respect to these components.
Mm-hmm. But this would also be another place, on B, on this 242, where it talks about residential developments that are not subject to design review, to clarify that there would still be a objective standard
Good point.
to meet.
Yeah. That's a good
point.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be another revision we would
Yes.
want. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else, Susan?
No, that's it.
On it. Belinda?
I think I get what my biggest worry with this is that the Planning Commission seems to be kind of cut out of things. Like it's always administration is planning department and city manager. Like just in this thing we were just reading and reviewing. And I know that's a streamlining process that we need to trust you and the planning city manager. We have had some experiences with that not working. And so, like I think, Vicki, we don't know you, and I don't know whether we trust you. I don't feel that way very strongly, but what I'm saying is that there was previous managers that just did things that were wrong, that were not in the ordinance, and they allowed them. And I don't know, that's why I worry a little bit that if you don't have the non-paid members of the community that are the review process and actually a conduit for the public to come to first, that it is not as transparent, I guess is what the word that everybody likes to use. And so that's my concern, and I don't know, kind of don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, I think I'm picking up what you're laying down there. So in short, you are concerned that the Planning Commission does not have either an actual or specified role in executing or implementing these programs. What we could do is go through and wherever by statutory requirement you are the regulating body, it ought to be spelled out here. That's a fine point to make, and that could be another change. I think that there's also changes that don't require you by statutory mandate, because you're not the regulating body. That's a little slipperier of a slope to say we're going to insert Planning Commission into the creation of city policy that doesn't amend the municipal code or recommend to council to amend the municipal code. So we could make the decision at a staff level to give you sort of what the state law says about who is the regulating body, the authority, and if it is Planning Commission, we expressly state it here. Would that help?
Maybe, yes. I mean, right, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved in everything.
Yeah.
But I do want on a bigger project or a project that is needs to be looked at, that maybe the community members aren't going to like or something. I mean, where I know we have a lot of things in place that will prevent, like some of the pictures that were shown that were like 5-story buildings. Well, we have things in place that you can't do that, you know? So, but there are things that might be questionable because the neighbors or what, you know, I mean, it's just some projects may, and I don't really know, this is so complex for me. I mean, Melanie does a really good job of the micro reading, and I do a better job from the big back-a-ways perspective. So anything that maybe a planning commission should be in there should be in here. But if it's something that it's just a state mandate, it's straight across the board, I don't need to, I mean, there's nothing I can do. And I think that's one of the issues that I'm having here with what the public thinks is that we're creating this document when actually, and we're not really, the state is demanding we do these things. And we can't do a lot against some of these things. Isn't that true? I mean,
it's true, and we've tried to make that clear graphically and throughout the document. There is the gray area, and there is something that is not mandated by state law, but it is also something that HCD feels is important enough that they're going to hold certification over our heads to say, we're not going to certify your document until you clear the bar by a greater distance.
So
we're trying to thread that needle a little bit.
And so the certification thing, where, I mean, I know, you know, we've been here and we've been through a lot of these different meetings, well, not all the public has, obviously, but certification is, what does that mean?
Well, it means that we are compliant with the state housing law, for one, so we're operating in compliance with the law. There are a number of triggers that, or incentives, state grants, for example, HCD channels HUD funding that we take advantage of. Without a certified housing element, we are not qualified for those funds. We are also subject to greater scrutiny and a shorter housing cycle, potentially. The good news is we're not having to rezone. We're not having to change standards to increase density, for example. So R3 or R2 to R3 to make up for our regional housing needs numbers.
Okay.
So we're in good stead there. We don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting as it is.
Okay, so certification just, it's like paying your taxes, kind of? If
Little bit.
you pay them on time, you're
well,
you
it's
do
like
better?
driving without a license, potentially. You're not, you know, you're not in trouble until you get caught. So, and when
Right.
you are, you're
And
in
the
good
funding is important to us because we don't have the capital to be able to invest in these kinds
Right.
of housing units that we
And
need.
it's, by no stretch are we at a staff level to just try to play on the trust card a little. By no means are we trying to accelerate the process. This document is yours. The schedule is self-imposed. There's nothing that says we can't delay this by another 30 or 60 days. That is your decision to make. And the holidays and the lack of awareness of this document might be reason enough to do that. I can understand that empathy, or I can empathize with that position. I will tell you that we were careful to notice by 10 days in the paper. We did send email blasts in advance of it wasn't the 10-day requirement, but that's not triggered. We did notice the CEQA action, and you're a recommending body. You're not adopting or you're not exempting this document. You're not taking that action. You're recommending that action be taken by council. So that's the true trigger for the mandates to comply and to frankly go above and beyond with public notice. And if that's your decision, then staff will respect and comply with it and move forward, make the changes. And
Okay, so I would like to have Planning Commission put into some of these places that we should be, I think.
yeah, and I think I see Michelle's head nodding there, so I think she's captured some of those. Some of these by design, you're in there, so we'll make sure that's reflected.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Just to respond to Belinda's point, there will be another opportunity for the public to be involved when this goes to City Council. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. So this document would be, if you approve the resolution, staff would make the changes that we heard here tonight. We would publish that document on the website. We would put a hard copy at the required places, so City Hall, the library. We would notice and send and distribute the digital copies via email to everybody that's commented, and our existing email blast, which has 80 or so folks on it. And we would do that for a period of time, probably something like 10 days at minimum, prior to scheduling with council. So we would make sure that we had enough time to make the changes, to post it, to publish it, to email it, wait a specified amount of time, at minimum 10 days, and then and only then would we schedule for City Council review. That would get published again. Once that hearing is scheduled, there would be a public notice in the paper because this is a public hearing. And we would repeat with the public notices again and the reposting on the website if any changes were made.
When's this due back to the state?
It's not due by any specific deadline. We are seeking to get certified before honestly, I don't. Michelle, do you offhand know what our drop dead deadline is for certification?
Well, it was February 5th. Sometime in February. I want to say the 15th.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we were hoping to get through to City Council in, December, January. And then both of my previous cities and roughly 80% of the jurisdictions in California have been and will be late on delivering by that time to HCD. And in that case, we would continue to work through the process until we receive certification.
Is there a downside? So downside, upside to extending the review versus finishing our portion of the review? Is there upside, downside?
Again, as a recommending body, the determination that rests on all your shoulders is, do you feel that the substantive or non-substantive nature of these changes that we've talked about tonight constitutes either approval this evening under the process that I've just outlined. So we do get another crack at this with council to answer your question in the affirmative, and we do notice it, and we do ensure that it is indeed what you said. What you said on the record tonight required of us to make changes, and that gets published. You would get a review of that as individuals. You wouldn't have a public hearing. You wouldn't deliberate. You wouldn't receive public comment. But we would certainly take those public comments at a staff level to ensure that they're all responded to. Public response is also part of the documentation, so we would do to one commenter's, sorry, I've forgotten their name, to go and respond to all the comments that we've received. We will do that. That will be part of the document moving forward. The downside is that we are potentially delayed beyond the mid-February date by 30 or 60 days. And there are some consequences to that. Living without a certified housing element potentially precludes us from grant funding. In the next cycle, the notice of funding availability comes out for CDBG funds at about the same time. Without a certified element, we're potentially compromised with respect to that. So yeah, that's probably the biggest downside.
So we already, because this says, and I think it's Todd's letter, no, Paul, that this was actually due February 15th, 2023, so we missed out on all that for the fiscal year 2023.
Yes.
So we've already been delayed a year, or missed out for a year.
Yes.
I'm not skipping you, Vaughn, don't worry. I'm not.
Just checking. No, okay. You know, I always get concerned when I hear anybody use the term feels like this, feels like that. So with that in mind, I really want to address this. Is there any merit to the lack of timeliness on this document to the public?
No, not by staff's findings.
My next question then becomes, is there anything we can do better so people don't feel like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, what are those?
We could spend more time and staff resource, which translates to money, expense, consulting expense, city staff expense, to hold more public open house style events. Posting on the website is something that could probably be accelerated. We did do that with this one, so it was posted 7 days in advance of the hearing. Timeliness, though, is always a driver of this. You know, 7 days could be 14 days. 7 days could be more closer to a month even. It depends on how much time we've got in our calendar and how much wherewithal we have at a staff level.
And, you know, I get that there's going to be dissenters. You could have given 90 days notice and you'd still get the same repercussions and the same responses. So it's hard to delineate between those and this, you know, the ones that well, I'll leave it at that. Quite simply, my next question gets down to who interprets what is state compliance and isn't?
We have a reviewer that's a staff member at HCD. They make the original determination. They then accelerate that or elevate that through staff hierarchy, through a managerial level of review. So the letter that we will get next time will have had different eyes on it to make that call.
Okay, super. And just in the form of a public statement, when somebody thinks something fishy is going on, or maybe if there were here, I'd be the first one to say something about it. So if anybody is harboring those thoughts, you might want to just let those go, because the people I've seen here over this time that I've been on this commission, that wouldn't fly in half a second. So please ask folks to maybe dismiss those kinds of thoughts.
Okay.
Thanks, Vaughn. David, more, please? Yes?
No. Seems like it's kind of, the state's just kind of mandating things so that things don't get held up and more stuff gets built in a timely manner than getting stuck in a planning commission cycle for years trying to develop stuff that they view as needed. So, I don't.
Thanks, David. Alan?
So nothing we're changing here means that a project like a multifamily project gets less review than it would have last year.
Sorry, so could you?
Nothing we're changing in this means that a project that comes forward like a multifamily project will get less review after this passes than it would have prior to this passing.
If it's what's called a qualified housing project, so
Okay.
it is that 20% or more affordable, what it means is, right now, Chapter 816 in our R3 and commercial zones says that if you're over 4 units, you need a conditional use permit, and that would go before you to as the regulating body. However, after this document's adopted, if that same project were to come forth with a deed-restricted housing, affordable housing component of 20% or more, the first reviewer is going to be a staff review. By our code, it's not going to be required to go through the Planning Commission unless it's on appeal. And with those appeal provisions are still maintained.
And can we change that? Can we just say, even if it is one of those projects, we still want to see it? Do we have any reviewing authority?
Yeah, that is the statutory mandate for us to contend with. We have a choice to say, no, we're not going to comply with state law.
No, you guys review it on a staff level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decide, we'd like our planning commission to look at it, can you do that?
Can we elevate it
Yes.
to planning commission? We could do that, but we'd have to be clear that planning commission could only review it with objective standards.
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
what we're going to be developing.
Right. So now ministerial review is what we're talking about here. So ministerial means you have a body or an individual that reviews a project with objective certainty at the end of that review. So in other words, if it were this body and it were scheduled for a public hearing as part of our conventional discretionary review process, what happens is there's the potential for it to mislead the public into thinking that they could show up to the public hearing
Protest.
and affect the outcome or object to the application of objective standards. That's what HCD is trying to get away from. They're trying to say that for affordable housing projects moving forward, that there be more procedural certainty. So that's the ministerial part. And that the review, what they're being reviewed against is objective and measurable. It's no longer subjective. So we couldn't deliberate, we couldn't take in public comment, and this body couldn't change their mind unless it violated an objective standard. And if it's objective standard, it's binary, it's yes or no. You can't turn a yes into a no if it complies. In other words, if they use 6 of the 10.
Yeah, but I think we've all seen ugly projects make through design standards. And how do we go about, I want to support housing in different places around the community. I want that to happen. But I do want them to meet a certain aesthetic standard as well. And if I'm understanding it correctly, the state's saying, well, we want a lot of things, but we don't necessarily get them.
Yeah, the design sensibility part is going to be the tricky part of the design standards, because what we're trying to do is create a framework within which creativity can flourish. You don't want to create a cookie cutter set of standards so that everything looks the same.
Right.
But you want to control or restrict that project from being too big, too tall, too looming, et cetera. Those are standards that you can control. You can control that envelope, that building envelope, with objective standards. That's the character part that you sort of want to let go.
And we're not changing our height restrictions or anything like that through this process, or are we?
We're not. There's no standards changes with this document.
So if a 4-story apartment complex came in, it still wouldn't meet our standards here. Actually, we don't have the correct fire apparatus for that anyway.
If an affordable housing project came in, the density bonus housing law, which has been in effect since the 70s, would prevail, and it gives density bonus to projects that are qualifying by affordability.
So
And that's something this body has applied previously.
So if a 4-story apartment complex came in that met all those standards, it could go through here?
It's possible, though not probable. And the reason I'm hedging just a little bit is because it's a 3-dimensional envelope. Zoning and intensity, as you know, is horizontal and vertical. So that envelope is something that by state law, if it's a certain amount of affordability, you're granted a certain density bonus depending on the degree of affordability, which could go up to as much as 80 to 100% of your base densities. So you could actually double your density for a 100% affordable housing project and need to either compromise or concede setbacks, lot coverage, or height. Those are the three.
There was also the notation in there about limiting the units per acre, for example. So I think that might preclude, because I wouldn't want to see a 4-story building in town any more than I wanted to see a 6-story one in Reading. I just wouldn't.
I love the 10-story building in Ashland.
Yeah.
So I'm not one, I don't mind I'm not actually against them, I'm just wondering, how does, given that particular scenario, we don't have the firefighting equipment for a multi-story building. That's just the only thing I can think of. Would criteria like that get in the way of a project like this?
The code or the law is very clear in that other standards still apply.
Okay.
So that's the short answer to that question is
No,
the
that's
rest
good.
of the
That's good
municipal
enough.
code, including 2022 fire code, applies.
All right, that's all for me. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, well, thoughtful, helpful questions, comments, answers. If for what it's worth, I guess my opinion is, I think that, without having a paper anymore, it is so hard to get the message out, and I don't know what to do about that. Obviously you're thinking about it. Maybe you'll think about it some more. But in the meantime, it seems to me that with another round with the City Council, we have an opportunity. The public has an opportunity to participate, and people who are hopefully still listening can hear that they will have another opportunity. I don't think we're having particularly substantive changes. So with this existing document and with additional track changes in another color, I hope that people would feel like they can really dig in between now and when City Council has it. So I would be fine with adopting this resolution and sending it off to council, me personally. Before you do that, I'm going to list what I've heard so far from everybody that we've been talking about, and I want to make sure that we agree. That the RV parking requirement doesn't include market rate. It's only for the target. So that won't change for market rate, the RV parking piece. That we will not be revising. What's that?
Specific, the RV thing. Yeah.
It's specific. Well, we talked about it. I just want to make sure it's in there. Is it specific enough?
It seems specific to me.
That we don't need, that it does. I was under the impression.
It's not a requirement for,
Market rate.
no, for multifamily.
Oh, yeah, that it's not.
non-market
Oh,
rates.
but it's still included for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll scratch that one. There we go. Right, we're a team. That we will not be revising our 2010 guidelines, but will be developing objective guidelines for target multifamily housing.
Based on the existing guidelines, that's the subtle distinction that we're going to make.
Okay, based on existing. So I would want to, that's what we talked about, so that would be one of the conditions we would add. we would change, and I forget which one that Belinda mentioned, we would change to single-parent household as opposed to having gender associated with that. On 2.4.2b, we would delete the section about design review. Remember that one? So, because it says here that, it says that projects are not subject to design review, and in fact, they will be subject to objective design review.
We'll clarify that.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, so, and the last one is this document you all will add in places where the Planning Commission is involved, that will be specified in the document. Did I miss anything?
Probably can't, where planning commission can be involved.
Can be involved, would be involved? Is it codified, can or would?
Yeah.
Is this a may?
My interpretation of that, of your prompt would be that where our current municipal code provisions specify this body as the enforcing authority, we so identify that as the administration, as playing a role in the administration of the future, any future program. What I want to be careful of is we're not inserting Planning Commission as the administration to play an administrative role when that's exactly what HCD doesn't want us to do with, right? So I'm going to be surgical about that. But for me, I think it's clerical and it's non-substantive because our existing code already provides for that review authority by this body. And that's what we'll make clear.
I just want to make sure that we don't get lost.
Yeah, got it. That's clear.
Okay, so now, if somebody would like to make a motion.
You better make it, babe.
Vaughn's on it, I can tell. And we have our sample. Did you remember in our packet?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, you're so
Isn't
advanced.
this it?
I came prepared here today.
Clearly.
Agenda item summary, I think.
I know.
Okay, so I move that we adopt the changes that were just discussed and agreed upon, and that we move this this project to the next level, based on the fact that I'm satisfied that it was a timeliness concerns were met. So otherwise, I'd be saying, no, we shouldn't be doing this right now, but I do, go ahead.
Just make your motion.
There's the motion.
That was your motion?
There's the motion.
Basically.
Thanks, Alan.
The suggested motion.
Yeah, we just do it.
Okay.
I'll use his technique.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And Alan? Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think you're going to roll call it.
Oh, do we need a roll call?
Yes.
Okay, could you handle a roll
Yes,
call first?
Commissioner Pardee.
Aye.
Commissioner McDowell.
Aye.
Commissioner Von Boeninger.
Aye.
Commissioner Higuera.
Yes.
Chair Findling.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarion.
Aye.
And Commissioner Beck.
No.
Unusually, the motion did pass with one dissenting vote. Do you mind letting us know your thoughts, just because they're usually so helpful?
If the people feel that they need more time, in this case, because it's important and they feel it's important to them, I think we should give it to them, given the holiday, and this is all happening fast, even though I am convinced we met requirements as far as public notification. I have other reasons, but I don't choose to elaborate, so no.
Thank you. But
There is a second round, right? So.
right, the city council gets a shot at it.
Yes.
I know, but
Yeah, no, thank you. That's why I wanted to know, because like I say, your input's usually very helpful. So before I leave this item, I would like to chat about moving forward, and if we want to start tackling the objective design review, commissioner thoughts on that? Do we want to get started on the objective design review and what that might look like and what the timing might look like, and if anybody were interested in on being a subcommittee, if that's the direction we go? Absolutely.
Do we need to make a motion to approve the CEQA exemption as well?
That was built into this one that was written for us.
We've always done a CEQA exemption and then and then the other component
Finding the
separately
draft.
previously.
Yeah, it is, that's a good point of clarification. There is a two-part component to it.
Thank you.
It's in the resolution, so it appears to me that you're all, by your vote, supporting the contents of the resolution, which do find or support the CEQA exemption, or recommend to council to do so. That's
Okay.
your role.
Everybody good with that still?
If we have
It seemed that was
disagreement on
my.
that, we should vote on it.
Do we need a second motion?
You could, to clarify, sure.
Sure,
To
let's
make,
do it.
yeah, for the sake of the record, it certainly wouldn't help.
Okay.
Alan will do it this time.
David. Motion to accept the CEQA exemption for the housing element update.
Second.
Okay, with David moved, Alan seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
And it sounds like the same ratio with Paul
Commissioner Beck dissenting.
dissenting on that. Okay, commissioners, like I say, we can start on this right away.
Well, so what you're saying is, who's the subcommittee? Because that was what was talked about. is having
Right,
a
does this
subcommittee.
sound like a direction we want to go? And do we need council's permission to give them this? Or can we just say, well, we're ready to go, and you could hand that off to them at the council meeting, and then they'd say yes or no? How does that work?
You don't need their permission, but it's quite likely that that some kind of a joint committee could be beneficial. So what I would like to do is gauge interest to a chair to see who would among you be interested in participating. Run that by the city manager and elevate that to council to see if there could be two of them, no more than two, to participate. And that way you would have a joint committee. More the merrier.
I would probably make the suggestion that we consider people with the longest tenure as far as left on their term, to do that to allow enough time rather than people with shorter terms.
Is anybody's term ending this?
Maybe mine, but they haven't said anything to me.
I have no
Yes,
idea.
Of course, I haven't worked for the last year. There's been at least a year I didn't work in this one because of not having a plan.
And there's that.
But I think there's me and somebody else maybe.
I think it's me.
That are coming up
No,
soon.
Have you been,
you haven't been here 4
but
years.
he filled in.
No, but
because he
that's
filled
right.
in, because he replaced. But who did you replace?
Josh. You
Josh.
replaced Josh.
Kirby.
But didn't
So I just
Nyon
finished
replace
the.
Josh and then he replaced
So
Nyon?
So I,
That's a
You
Catholic.
replaced Josh.
I'm
you replaced
completing
Nye.
the 18 months of that term next month.
Gotcha.
Oh, right. That's how I came in too at the end of, I can't remember his name now. I filled in the last part of somebody's term, my first time around.
So that's the only reason why I brought that up, is maybe you might want to consider people
Because
who've
they
already
might
been
not.
extended.
they're not-
Oh, that's a good point.
So you've
back
got
in
consistency.
If we
It might happen.
Or run,
Okay.
apply.
Anybody interested? Anybody want to be appointed? No? Like a person with design
I've worked on the last
background?
Design guys.
Alan,
What's the catch?
I'm open. I'm
Oh,
open
yay.
to
Oh,
being
there you go.
part of the committee if it's
attitude.
not too time intensive.
I know, herding cats to get 5 people in the same room? Maybe.
It could be 3, it's up to you guys. If you want to do 3 and keep it at that. I just feel that to get some eyes on by council early is also helpful, because they know what to expect and they can do report back to that body through city manager. So it's just an opportunity.
Well, I was in on I was in on several, so I'm willing to do it. It's 1, 2, David? Alan?
I can participate.
Yes, David? All right. Paul, did you want to do it?
more qualified people than myself to do that.
Okay. David, Melanie, Tucson.
Okay? Yes.
Is there, I guess, projects in the pipeline that this needs to be done sooner than later?
No.
Okay.
No, you're fortunate there. There isn't anything looming that could be a deed-restricted affordable housing project that qualifies for objective standards that don't exist. So far, so good.
Okay, so I think at this point then, you'll take it to council to see if any of them want to participate.
I think it'd be wise to offer, yeah.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And then I think we're done with item 5. So, item 6, commission and staff comments. Would you like to start, Jeff?
Well, I think you've all impressed me. You're all dedicated, thoughtful, and passionate, and very well qualified for doing what you do. I've been doing this a while, and it's reassuring to have such a committed body. So I'm honored to both be here and proud of your dedication so far. So looking forward to working with you.
Anything coming up we should know about?
Objective design standards. Not that, honestly, I don't have any development projects that are in the wings. I'm still honestly trying to get my head around a lot of procedures and what my resources are. Trying to understand a little bit more about the capacity of staff to introduce new initiatives, and I think once we get the writing on the wall here with this document, there will be some budgetary discussions to be had about how we afford to implement the document. So that's top of my mind, and I'll be working with city manager and finance director to address that moving forward.
Do you want suggestions from us about what we would like to tackle that got ignored for the last 2 years?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So we have the sign.
Sign noise. Mm-hmm.
Parklets, there's no ordinance for that. They're just there, and something should be real with that. Anybody else? That's those little restaurants, that's what they call those little restaurants that are in the street. I think they call them parklets, isn't that what I've heard?
They do, yeah.
Airbnb.
I don't know.
Oh, an update.
I thought we did.
We'd like an update, I think, on that, because we hired
Anything
an
else?
outfit to manage that.
Yeah, we were trying to craft an ordinance to limit the amount of Airbnbs.
We sort of did.
I think it's done.
Yeah, it's done.
To the council.
They did create a percentage. I was going to ask some questions on the status of a few things, so.
The only other, and what happened with the affordable housing on Chestnut Street?
That was one of my
Update,
questions.
yeah, update on that.
Danto project. No, you're stealing my thunder, man.
You guys
Sit here silent the whole meeting and then steal my
But I
question.
think it was get approved and try to find out.
Okay,
Go
then,
for the other ones.
all right, are you done then?
Yeah, sure, I'll let somebody else have a chance.
Then I would say
just
Paul
stuck my
needs
foot in.
to.
Okay, yeah, so I have a shotgun question. One of them you're probably not going to be able to answer or can't answer, so I'm going to ask it, is whatever happened to Mountain Cannabis, what's going on with the Danco project, and what the heck is going on with Golden Eagle?
Oh, yeah.
Eagle.
What's
They
that?
moved to the church out by the lake.
By Shasta Brown.
But I think they haven't surrendered the property.
There's somebody else's, there's another one in there.
No, the property across from the hospital.
Anyway, so yeah, what Belinda said, the Danco project and Mountain Cannabis, which is the kid that came to us with a very incomplete plan, went past we're refusing him twice, got it passed through city council, and I haven't seen any groundbreaking up over here.
There is.
Is there?
There's a ton of stuff on that piece of property also.
But no actual building yet?
No, they've got all the stuff to do stuff.
Okay, but no actual construction?
Well, it's really got a lot of stuff there you could steal if you wanted to, because there's so much stuff there. I mean, it's a huge construction
I guess I didn't
site.
understand then where that was to be. I thought it was in proximity to the wholesale solar, and evidently it's
No.
somewhere else.
It's past the dump.
That's why.
They're two separate ones.
Two separate ones?
Built a pump house, it looks like, is all
Sorry.
that's
So
completed.
she's not talking about the same thing. That's what I thought, because I go by there a lot, and I'm like, when, they went through a lot of trouble to beef with us over
She's
it, and
talking
nothing's
about the
happening.
one that got
This
to
has
us
been a
2 or
year
3
now.
years ago that we approved.
On the other side of the entrance to the dump.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Melinda, you might be talking about
A different project.
The highway property that's right past them that has all that material on it.
There's 2 lots there.
Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. Forget I said anything.
Okay, and then there's another project that's supposed to go in with Jess Ramirez Welding. There's a sign there, future home of,
So let's.
so anyway,
Else for this-
what's the update with the Danco project?
Yeah, I can tell you, there's actually 2 additions. The Danco project, as you know, is poised for building permit submittal. We have yet to receive an indication from them as to when we can expect that submittal. We've asked, and we have yet to receive a response.
Have they actually purchased the property? Because I think they were going through escrow, and something happened with their funding, and it was delayed.
Yeah, I can inquire further, but I did leave a call into their project manager and have not heard back yet. So I can circle back on that and report back to you. The other, I will tell you that we did get a pre-application conference on rehabilitating the nest.
Yay!
Yes, for residential projects. It's not an active case under review, so I can tell you that it is, we hope to have a submittal soon, which means it would come before you as a conditional use permit because they are reactivating what is a vacant property, and by definition, our code says that is required to catch up with all new codes. So
Right,
new
starting
municipal
from
code, new
scratch.
building code, they have a fair amount of work to do, and we're working on what that looks like. So.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Tucson?
And can we
Sorry.
please do a noise ordinance?
Yeah, no kidding.
Because what's happened is we used to have a lot of live music around here, and certain businesses have endeavored to have live music,
Hey,
and we don't have
Paul?
an ordinance. Oh, sorry. And it's caused friction in the community. So I know we have a lot other important things to do, but I would hope in the next year, maybe we could get started on that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Tucson?
I just want to say welcome again. It's great to have you on board. I think you're going to be a great fit here. It's my take.
Okay, anything else, Belinda?
I always wonder about the hospital, the old hospital on B or A. What is that? Across from the dentist's office?
Yeah.
That's,
Up the street from the nest. The other place,
that's
other-
kind of the same, almost as bad.
Yeah, agreed.
but just as bad, yeah.
We've had speculation, inquiry, but nothing official.
Because it's a massive, expensive thing to do.
I do know that it's in sorry shape, and it's probably a tear down.
Yeah.
I do also, sorry, now that you're firing synapses here for me, triggering for me. The chainsaw sharpening building on the corner of, thank you.
Oh, Chibato's, yeah.
Yeah, there's been speculation there as well. So we've had some,
Like somebody buying it?
yeah, Chestnut and,
That's the old DMV.
Yeah, the old
DMV.
DMV.
There you go.
Yeah, the old DMV.
wasn't it a chainsaw?
No,
or-
yeah, it was a small injury
Small-
repair.
Small injury repair.
So what was going to go on with that?
Speculation, we had a sort of an unofficial or sort of a informal pre-application conversation with adaptive reuse of that building for retail purposes.
Well, Tim was endeavoring to sell his business. I thought that was happening, but I guess not.
But again, no formal submittal, only early inquiries.
Okay.
It was, yeah.
Is he
Bond?
still there?
I just want to, again, reiterate that, Jeff, glad you're here. From what I've seen so far tonight, looks like you give everything a good 360 view, which is really what's needed. I think for this community, I think they don't want just one piece or one direction. They want it, as you've seen even this evening, there's several different, I don't want to say, I'd say points of view, and it's good that everybody gets, felt like they're heard.
Exactly, thank you.
Great. Anything else? David?
I'm just going to be Paul and the banner signs.
Oh, yeah.
on the boardwalk.
That's a 10.
And other places in town.
Yeah, so there have been, I've had complaints from businesses that certain other businesses are using banner signs when they have to spend thousands of dollars to be in compliance with our sign ordinance. And it's been almost a year now. Is that right, Dave?
What?
It's been almost a year since we,
I feel like it's been a few years.
and still those people haven't taken down their banner signs. But that's more of a Todd thing, I think.
Code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
That was done by
Well,
a city manager that's no longer with us that allowed that to happen. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
why we don't always trust everybody.
Can I say one more thing? I know I'm out of turn.
And then-
So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll go last then.
Anything else, David?
no.
Alan?
Welcome aboard, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So in one of the communications to us in the letter, somebody said they felt like we don't, and I don't know if they were talking about city staff or the planning commission, but that we don't hear them. And I assure you, with this group of people, we really try to hear everybody's outlook on everything. So going along with what you said before, that's the furthest thing from the truth. And I feel confident with everybody up here that we're really looking out for our community, and any growth we have is going to be planned and intelligent growth. So we hear everybody. We don't, you might not feel that that's the case, but I firmly believe that. So that's it.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, item number 7, future agenda items. Are we going to have a meeting in December, perhaps, and what the agenda might look like?
Yeah, we're anticipating if early applicant contact or potential applicant contact with the Nest, we hope that that application is submitted within the next handful of days, in time certainly to meet public hearing noticing requirements for the December meeting. So that's anticipated based on feedback we're receiving from them.
Anything else coming down the pike?
Not to my knowledge at this point.
Lovely. Item 8, we're going to adjourn our November 28th, 2023 Planning Commission special meeting.